challenge today, and which is a challenge, is not a new challenge. A lot of people say the world has changed, it's moving fast, you have to change dramatically. Their world has always been changing. If you go back to 14th, 15th century, there was a status quo. There was a certain standardization happening, there was no progress in society. And then there was this Renaissance movement in Europe in the 14th, 15th century. And Renaissance was something like the revolt of reason against the rule of tyranny. The castles of faith had begun to crumble down. The missiles of inquiry were active. Now, these words were relevant in 15th century, but today also when we are searching on 2020, they're still relevant. So that the world doesn't change at all. Now the challenge, one is the challenge of a CEO, which is I think a less challenge, because as a CEO, as ma'am mentioned, clearly you are alone. So you can't pass the buck. You can pass the buck reverse way. You can go back to the other employees. So how do you connect? How do you able to relate with the organization? I think 2-3 fundamental changes which are happening. One is the ability, I call it the IIT, which is there. You can solve the technology, the inclusiveness, and the innovation. The biggest challenge for any CEO today is not its direct competitor. It is the changing world. And if you don't change, or you are not able to predict, and sometimes you cannot predict, but if you don't change as per the changing world, you will be the biggest loser, how strong you may be. US learned it in Vietnam, various people, SAVAK was a secret service police in Iran. So clearly, how do you change? And one of the key elements of change is also that you have to keep your mind open. You know, today we have a number of Ds. One is discourse, Baba Ramdev type of discourse. One way, other is listening. Other is diatribe. Some TV channels, don't want to name the persons who are on the channels because some comedian has already gone bypassed for 3 months, he can't fly, so I don't want to talk of any persons. But there is a thing called discussion, dialogue, and debate, which if you combine is like Guftagu, which you're talking of. One of the key leadership I've seen, and this is the most successful CEOs which I've observed, is their share of mind is always high, but their share of voice in a meeting is low. I've generally seen in CEOs, some meetings, in a meeting of 10 people, they will speak 96% of the time. So the market share of voice is 96%. But since they are speaking, the share of mind to get inputs is only 4. So can we have a better share of mind and less share of voice? And when you have a bigger share of mind, you are able to get ideas. Because ideas will come from people within the organization. One of the key challenges will always remain is the ideas are there, but are you ready to listen to it? Are you ready to absorb them? And that's an important point. Or you have a leadership style like Asrani in Sholay. हम अंग्रेजों के ज़माने की जेलर, आधे दाएं आधे बाएं बाकी हमारे पीछे, आधे दाएं चले गए आधे बाएं तो पीछे आधे रहे ही नहीं. But that's the challenge which we face today. And clearly innovation is not today like Archimedes' principle or Newton's law of apple being thrown. Innovation sometimes means thinking differently and even taking the best practices from other areas, other industries. Various things, like ma'am today mentioned, I mean, in the police service, there are a lot of ideas which are there for leaderships to learn on. So how do you incorporate those ideas into your industry, your work, your style? That is innovation. And innovation can only be when you are challenging status quo, when you have an open mind, and when you are ready to be criticized or critiqued. That's an important part which is there. Technology will always be there. Technology, I would say the best technology is a combination of clock and compass. But I still believe for the compass, technology won't help. Compass direction will still come from the mind, the human mind in some sense. In terms of clock, in terms of precision, in terms of accuracy, in terms of getting it, that will be important. And if you need to talk and dialogue, it will happen to you well because you're completely engaging. We talked of fireside chat, we talk of not a discourse, but we talk of even a town hall. That's the element which we are looking at of it. And inclusiveness is getting people all profiles. Today, one of the biggest challenges of management graduates, they come from the same socio-economic background, so they think the world is the same, whereas the world is very different. So do you get that culture? Do you get people of that different styles, different ages, different caste creed, different socio-economic profile, different mindsets into the organization? Because that is the complexity of the world. If you have diversity in your organization, and diversity doesn't mean only in terms of male, female, or other things, diversity means in terms of ideas and thoughts. So these are challenges which will always remain. But I believe the world is changing fast, the speed of change is fast, but the values and the principles, they were valid, which was 300 years back, they will be valid today, tomorrow. How you apply them, how you inculcate with them, and how you change with the time is a challenge and opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. I think very important point which I summarize as listening to you is that the speed of the compass, the direction of the compass has to be under control all the time. And one has to gauge that what changes are likely to happen. And that again reinforces my belief sensing is a perpetual thing. And sensing cannot be outsourced. You might find a partner to outsource your major core processes or any other process, but this sensing has to stay within, and somebody has to continuously do this. Question is who should do this and how to enable them to do it. That leads to the skill set further. Yeah. So thank you very much. Next, I open to Mr. Pandey. Yeah. Yeah.
First, thank you so much for having me here. When I look at the conference theme of the workplace of tomorrow, I think for me, what was more material is what are the characteristics of people who will populate the workplace of tomorrow. So I have what I think that the employee of future will be very, very different from the employee we have been in the past and the employee we see today. And how will he or she be different? To my mind, it is captured in one word. The employee of tomorrow or the workplace of tomorrow will be a far more aware workplace. Now let me just try and kind of break this into a little bit of context. The A in that stands for ambitious. The employees of today and the employees of tomorrow are likely to be far more ambitious and far less accommodating of their own personal limitations. They frequently will and should try and kind of get to a point where they think that they are capable of doing almost anything in the world. So I think ambition is one of the things that's going to drive, and the employees being ambitious is one of the first points that I'd like to mention. At the same time, you'll have a worried, which is what W stands for. Your workplace is worried. The workplace is worried today. The workplace will be more and more worried tomorrow. People are stressed because of multiple things in their life. People are stressed because of the marketplace. Their tolerance levels are going lower. They always have a self-doubt. They see around them how skills that are appropriate to one point become suddenly out of date in a certain stage. A classic example being people who are today in telecom, which was in 2000s one of the most feted jobs, and today just about everyone is on the market, or most of the people are in the market, and people don't know how to kind of marry the skills that they have got in the last 15, 20 years, and in what context can it be used. So it's going to be a really worried workplace, irrespective of the organization you're working for. Third, a good point would be that people would be accommodating, in the sense of accommodating of different ages, different genders, different sexuality, different socioeconomic profiles, etc., some points that were mentioned. So I think even accommodating of, say, cyborgs or robots, because the reality of people who are entering the workplace today is that within 20 years, they will be working with some version of either a cyborg or a robot in their workplace. And your HR systems today are completely inadequate to deal with that kind of reality. So I think that's the workplace that, that will be accommodating, because the people would have grown up accommodating these things progressively in their lives. Fourth are reactive. The workplace has got to be, it will be reactive, far more opinionated, far more restless, far more compulsively distracted, and not just because of social media, because of so many influences that they had, because of so much turmoil that they see around them. They are going to be perpetually questioning the status quo, even if there is no need to, do so. The example being Google. I mean, if you see the example of Google and the Google workplace and the role HR plays there, and the employee activism that has been seen in such campuses, I think that will become the order of the day. And finally, E. I think it will be a very, very entrepreneurial culture. So your traditional work hierarchies of dividing a work into, an organization into a CEO and functional heads and business heads and so is all going to not disappear, but become less relevant. Work has to be packaged into bot-sized or small-sized, pod-sized work points so that people feel like an entrepreneur when they come to it. So to my mind, I think these are the components of an aware workplace. The question whether organizations, academia are ready to do that, my feeling is that, at least I can say about organizations because I'm part of organizations, that most of the organizations that I know either are in a state of denial or have a very limited context of or a limited time frame in their minds in which they want to kind of impact lives. If you extend that time frame to say 20, 25 years, the world will be as different in terms of managerial capabilities, requirement, or the workplace as the 20 years back was. Ms. Bahuguna said here that policing itself, in the last 20 years has incorporated a lot of technology. Now, who could have believed it possible? Didn't 10 years back or 12 years back, most of the sales have the same answer that if you have to sell, you have to go walk from street to street to street to street to street. Now, today, the whole system has changed. And that is the same change I think the next 20 years will bring as far as the workspace design, the workplace hierarchy management, and other things as relevant to people and systems and machines who will together co-populate this place will face in the next 20 years.